Hello, everybody. Welcome. I've been asked to pass along a quick announcement to you. Today, there is somebody going around who's going to be potentially asking if you want to participate in a short survey. You are under no obligation to do this, so if you don't want to participate in the survey, feel free to say no thanks, and they will move along. But if you are open to providing some feedback, they'll be going around today after we split up into our small groups, so would appreciate any feedback that you are willing to provide. I don't actually know what they're going to be asking. You know everything that I know about it now, so just be aware that may be happening today. Also, should be thinking about starting on the what's that assignment called? The web form, the Web Caesar. Thank you. Yes, because that's due Thursday, I believe. So I still got a few days left to work on it. If you need some help or you have some questions, we'll be able to help you out today after lecture, but just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that that due date is coming up very soon. I think that's all the reminders that I had. Are there any questions before we hop into today's material? Yeah, what's up? Okay, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it. If that happens again today, please holler at me in the middle, because I try to be conscious of that, but sometimes I get caught up. So please holler at me if I need to slow down. I will say that while I do want people to participate in the walkthroughs, it's not the best time to solve problems or troubleshoot errors that people are running into, because we're working together as a class, right? So if you do run into a problem, if you have an error during the walkthrough, the best solution in that case might be to sit back, watch the rest of the walkthrough as a demo, and then flag me down afterwards, and we can certainly get any problems resolved that way. Unfortunately, that's just a fact of the logistical situation that we are in. But yes, I do want to make sure that we involve as many people as possible, so feel free to holler at me if I am going too quickly through the material. Any other questions or comments before we get started today? All right, let's go ahead and do a little review session before the walkthrough. Who can describe to me what a session is? Anybody? No? What about message flashing? Did you guys not do the prep work today? Oh, it's April 1st. Oh, you should have seen your faces. It was so good. Too bad I didn't get that on video. Oh, man. Yeah.
You did this all day long?
This is the only class I had today, actually, so I've been looking forward to this all day. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's do the real stuff. Why do we need validation? What's the point?
You don't play tricks on us.
Yes, that is the best answer I could have hoped for. People are going to try and do mean things to you, and validation can help make sure that you're prepared for that and ready to respond. Or it doesn't have to be malicious, though, right? Sometimes people aren't mean; they're just how do I say this? Not all there, not fully aware of what's going on. So they may be confused about what you're asking for and give you the wrong thing. So that's another reason why we might need some validation techniques in our code. So how do we do this? What are some common techniques that we're going to use? What are some common ways that we are going to perform validation? What are some things we're going to be looking for? What are some examples of bad data that you might expect to be given in an application? Yeah, so if I'm expecting a number and you give me text, that could be a problem. The opposite could also potentially be true, right? If I'm expecting you to tell me your name and you give me the number 3, then that would be a little confusing, perhaps. Unless that's your name. What else we got? I'm sorry? Blanks. Length. Yeah. So we see this a lot with passwords, right? It has to be a minimum length. Sometimes they go farther than that and say it has to contain certain types of characters in there as well, yeah. So those kinds of things are all parts of validation. What else?
Something's out of the range.
Out of the range?
So like on the time.
Okay, yeah. So if we're asking for time or...
You put an hour 25, it could be like...
Mm-hmm. Or people's ages, right, is another one. Like if you tell me your age is -7, that's probably not right. Something probably went wrong there. So we should probably do something about that. Cool. Any other types of validation that you are aware of from the prep work or elsewhere? I'm sorry? Email, yeah. Emails have a very specific form that they are expected to be in. There's actually a lot more to validating an email than you might actually anticipate. There's a lot of rules. You can actually find the spec for validating email addresses online and verify that. And actually, if you're doing something to validate emails, you're expected to follow that specification. Thankfully, it's so common that we don't need to really figure out how to do it ourselves anymore. A lot of code will provide that validation for you. You just need to apply it. Good. Any other things I'm forgetting? There are lots of others, right? Validation's a broad topic. It applies to lots and lots of things. You see it probably with things like credit cards a lot. Has to be, 16 digits, and things like that. So then what should we do? If somebody gives us a bad value, somebody gives us some information that we're not expecting, what should we do? What? Tell them nicely. Tell them that they screwed something up, and don't just tell them that they got it wrong, but give them some indication of what you were looking for, so that when they try again, they're not just going to try and plug the same value in over and over. Do a little guess and check, although we've probably been there sometimes, right, where you've got a form and you're like, I don't know what you want, so I'm just going to try random stuff until you're happy. I feel like we've all probably been there at some point in time. If you give people more information about what you're expecting, that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. So yeah, we're usually going to give them another shot, as many as they need, honestly, right? As many chances as they need to fill it out. We're usually going to give them as many tries as they need to give us the proper information and give them a push in the right direction. So then where should we perform validation? Where am I actually doing the check to see if the information's good? Everywhere, all over the place. So really it's broken down into two categories. We've got client-side validation and server-side validation, right? So, and we're gonna check it both places. Why is that necessary? Why can't I just do it on the client side and then consider that that's good? Why do I have to do it in both spots? Yeah.
Because a person can override at the client end what you're asking for.
Yeah. So we can fiddle around with stuff. I'm going to show you this a little bit later. We might do a little demo of this later. People can mess around with your website, can make your code do things that you didn't intend for it to do. And so in that particular case, the client-side validation may not catch it, but if I do some extra validation on the server side, it might catch some of those issues. And the opposite's also true, right? There are some issues that maybe the server wouldn't catch for whatever reason. A little trickier, I think, to pull that off, but still theoretically possible, where the client side would catch it. The sooner I can catch it, though, the better. I think that's a good general rule to follow. The sooner I catch these problems, the better. The longer I let them propagate through, the more likely it's going to cause other problems as they travel through my program. So I want to try and catch them as soon as possible. What is an escape character? We've actually talked about this before, but today's a good day to talk about it again, do a little bit of review. What's an escape character? Like a quote, yeah, that's a good example. There's other examples out there. Quote's a good one. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? Greater than and less than, so angle brackets, that's what those are called, yeah. Angle brackets, lots of different forms of punctuation, honestly. Even the slash itself can be escaped and may need to be escaped. And so why? What's the big deal? We're actually using this a little bit differently than how we've used it in the past. In the past, we've used escape characters for things like making a new line. /n would move me to the next line. That's not really what we're interested in escape characters for in the context of validation. What are we interested in escape characters for as it relates to validation? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So if somebody tries to write code and submit that to your form, it's possible that that code could actually be inserted into your website and make your website do things that you did not intend it to do. We call this code injection. And it's not the last time we're going to hear about this particular topic. So HTML injection is a thing. It's annoying. It's not. It can be dangerous, but there are other more dangerous forms of injection, I think would be a safe way of characterizing it. But really, even just the fact that it could mess up our website is enough reason for us to care about it, enough reason for us to try and do something about it. So then, by escaping those characters, we ensure that it doesn't get executed as code and gets properly displayed as the text that we intended for users to submit through the form. How do we perform string substitution? What's that going to look like in our code? We're going to do this today, actually. I want to substitute a value into a string. What does that look like? Dot format, yeah, dot format. And so then I have to do something to the string itself as well, right? What do I see inside of the string if I want to use dot format? Curly braces. Those curly braces with numbers inside of them. And so then how do those numbers work? What do those numbers represent? The index of the list that I'm passing to format, right? So whatever's whenever I see a curly brace with a 0 inside of it, that's going to pull the first value from whatever list I pass in and substitute that in where that placeholder is. And then curly brace 1 would be the next item on the list, and so on until I've used up all the values. This is not the only way to perform string substitution. You actually could use string concatenation as well to get a similar effect. Some of you may have done this on prior assignments, as a matter of fact. But format does, I think, help make things a little bit more concise, a little bit less dense, less verbose, which can be advantageous. How do we perform a redirect? I need to send somebody to a different page. How does that work? I'm sorry? There's a method, yeah. There's a method for redirects, and then what information do I need to provide? The path, or the route. Yeah, the route that we want to send them to. Why? Why might we do this? What's a situation where this is something that we might want to do? So the page, I updated a page and I want to reload it, or maybe the page doesn't exist anymore and I want to send them to where the new version is. We actually see that a lot, right? This page is moved. I'm going to send you to the new one. That happens quite a bit. What's another reason? After you log in. So somebody logs into a page and you want to send them to the actual content of the website, right? That's another very common way. What else? There's something that has to do with what we're talking about today, actually, that would be a good use of a redirect. What if somebody gives me bad information? What do I want to do? I want to send them back where they came from and tell them to try again. I'm going to send them back to the original spot. So I can use a redirect for that purpose. Oh, sorry, you gave me bad data. I'm going to send you back to the entry form and let you try again. In fact, that's exactly what we're going to see redirects used for today during the walkthrough. And that's next on our agenda. Before I switch over, though, and start doing some code, are there any questions about the concepts we've discussed so far. Okay, all right? All right, cool. Let's switch over and do today's walkthrough. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Git Bash. I already had Git Bash open. It's still, you can see on the branch from the studio that we did on Thursday of last week. I have already committed my studio code. I do that at the end of every class, so I already committed it. If you haven't, now is a good time to do that, get that committed. So I'll give you a second to do that if you have not done so already. And the next thing that we're going to do is get the next branch for our walkthrough. So we just finished Studio 2. That means we are ready to move on to walkthrough number 3. So I'll go ahead and check out the walkthrough 3 branch. Okay. And then the next thing that we need to do is open up the code. I don't have my code editor open yet, so I'm just gonna open up main.py in Visual Studio so that we can get started on today's walkthrough. And then we'll take a minute to go look at the instructions for today and make sure we understand what we're gonna be doing before we dive in and write some code. All right, let's pull this up here. So if I look at my code, it should look more or less like how things were at the end of Studio 2. You can see that it's got the, whoops, whoa, where'd it go? Scroll back up. You can see that it's got the drop-down box code listed in here. That was what we did at the end of class on Thursday last time. The movies are different, but the general concept is the same as what we did last time. So we're going to make some modifications to this program today to perform some validation. In particular, I think we're going to validate this right here. We're going to validate this drop-down box. We want to make sure that if a user is trying to cross off a movie from their list, that the movie that they're trying to cross off is actually on their list. We don't want them to give us a movie that's not actually on their watch list, because that doesn't make sense. So that's the kind of validation that we're interested in performing today. Let me pull up the write-up, though, just to make sure that we are all on the same page with what we're going to be doing. The first thing that we're going to do is code up a very simple function. I was talking to some people about this last Thursday, actually. The fact that, we actually don't have a true watch list yet, and we won't be able to for at least a little bit more time. We're going to need a database to properly do a watch list. So we're getting closer to being able to incorporate a database into our program, but we're not there yet. And so in the meantime, we're just going to keep kind of pretending a little bit. We're going to keep kind of faking it a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a function that can fetch the pretend watch list. Eventually, when we talk about databases, we'll be able to get that watch list from a database. But for now, we're just going to hard code in a list of movies. And then what that'll let us do is perform some validation on the cross-off method. So we're going to make sure that when a user tries to remove a movie, that the movie that they're removing is actually on the watch list that they have. So we're going to validate it. We're going to make sure that it's a valid movie. If it doesn't, if they give us a bad movie, we're going to send them back to the form and tell them to try again. And we're going to print out an error message. We're going to print out an error message to make this happen that says, all right, you need to give us a better piece of input here. So we actually have, this is a significant chunk of work. This is not a small amount of stuff that we're being asked to do. And at the end, we'll test it out and make sure that everything works the way that we expect it to. So let's get started. first things first, we're going to write a function that we can use to fetch the watch list. So I'm going to find a good spot for that. I'll put it right here above the form, I guess, for now. I'm going to make a function called getCurrentWatchList. And again, eventually we're going to hook this up to a database, but we don't have one yet, so we're just going to hard code in a list of movies. I'll use the list that's in here already. It looks like we got Star Wars, the Avengers, etc. So it's a very simple function. We're just going to say return, oops, and then make a list here with Star Wars, my favorite Martian. You could actually copy paste these if you want to. I've never actually even heard of this movie. I don't know what it is. Is it an old movie? It used to be a TV show.
They made a movie out of it after, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that movie, but you know.
Yeah.
And so this is our function. It's very simple. It's not meant to be complicated. The only reason that we're doing this is because it's going to make some of the other things that we want to do today a little bit easier on us. In fact, one of the first things that I think we could consider doing is getting some practice doing some string formatting. So right now you can see that I have these movies, right, included in a drop-down box here. But what happens if I wanted to add more movies to this? I'd have to actually copy this line of code and then change the name of the movie, right? Or what if I wanted to just edit one of these things? Then I'd have to edit it twice because it appears in both spots. It's a little cumbersome. It's a little tedious right now. There's a better way we can do this. We can use string formatting to help make this process a little bit easier. And so what I would like to do next is actually find a way that we can use this function that we just created here and use it to create this menu. Use it to help us create this menu with string formatting. That's the next goal that I want to try and accomplish here. So what I'm going to do to help push us in the right direction, I'm going to need your help with this next part. I'm going to create a variable called crossoff_options. And I'm going to start it as a blank string. But what I want to do is have crossoff_options look like this. Look like all of these option tags, right? So think about what that means. I need to go through every movie that's on my watch list and construct an option tag for that movie, correct? That's my goal now, right? And I want to use string formatting to help me out with this process. So what do I need? What coding construct am I going to need to help me visit every movie and construct these option tags? I'm going to need a for loop. So for what? For movie in what? I can call the function, yeah. For movie in getCurrentWatchList. Okay. And now comes the fun part. I'm going to concatenate some option tags onto my variable. That's my goal. So I'm going to concatenate some stuff on here. So plus equals, that'll do string concatenation. And now I'm going to start coding up what I want the tag to look like. You can see I'm just actually copying stuff from down here. But when I get to this part, option value, what do I want to be put in here at this spot? Curly braces, yeah. I want to get a movie from the current watch list and substitute it in. So I'm going to put a placeholder here, right? I'm going to put a placeholder in this spot. And you can see that it recognizes what I'm doing, right? Actually, I should probably put some quotes in here as well. How do I do that? Is that okay? Does that look all right? Is the movie already in quotes? That's a good question. What do we think? I heard both answers. No, it's not already in quotes. If I want quotes to appear here, I need to include them, but is this the right way to do it? All right, yeah, I can use single quotes on the outside. That's one possible solution, right? If I want to include double quotes in my string, I can use single quotes on the outside. There's actually another way that we could have done it. Does anybody know another? Escaping. I could have escaped it. So I could have left it all as double quotes and put slashes out in front of those quotes to turn them into part of the string, not closing the string. Does that make sense? Either option is fine. In fact, I think most people would probably prefer the single quotes option, which is totally fine. That's totally okay. If you wanted to do the escaping, that would be fine as well. All right. And so now actually I've gotten to a point in my tag where I want the name of the movie again, right? So how do I do that? Curly braces, and then what value? 0. 0 again. I can substitute the same value into my string more than one time. That is okay, right? If I use the same number in multiple spots, the same value will get substituted into each of those spots, which is what I want. This is what I want here. Does that make sense? And so then to finish it off, we just need to close off the string. And so I'm making the claim now that after this loop runs, cross off options is going to look like this chunk of code right here with whatever movies in my list I have. Do you agree with that statement, or do you need some convincing that that is in fact the case? Oh, wait, we forgot a spot actually. We forgot a thing. Accidentally a thing. I missed the whole point of this exercise, which is to do dot format. Thank you. So what am I putting in here then? I'm sorry? Movie, yeah. The movie variable. The movie that I want to be substituted into this position. Thank you. Yeah, I totally forgot that part. My fault. All right, now I think the claim that I made earlier is accurate. Once this loop is finished, this cross-off options variable is going to look like these option tags down here. Do you see that, hopefully? And so what that means then is that I no longer need to have these hard-coded in, right? I don't need these here. In fact, what I could do is I could take this cross-off options variable and substitute it into this string, correct? So how would I do that? Curly braces, and then go down to the end of the string and type in dot format, and this time I'm plugging in cross off options. So we're doing a double substitution here. Let me pause for a second. I can actually fit all the code on the screen. That's good. Pause here for a second and just take a little recap. We're doing a double substitution. I'm using some substitutions to make these option tags, store them in a variable, and then once I have that done, I'm taking that variable and substituting it into my cross-off form to complete the form. Does that make sense? If we did this right, I should be able to save this code and run it right now and see that the form still works exactly the same as it did before. If I did this correctly, everything should still work. Nothing would have broken, and I should be able to execute the form exactly as it was. So let's take a moment to do that. Let's test our work before we move on, before we get too far ahead of ourselves. I'm going to save my code. Thank you for that message. I'm going to switch back over to the terminal here. And I'm actually not in my environment yet, so I need to do that first. And now I can run the page. OK. And I'll go ahead and try and grab this and paste it into my browser here. And I see that this menu still works. It still has the same contents in it. And so I can pick one of these and hit the button, and that still works as well. So I haven't added any additional functionality. I've just rewritten the code a little bit. I've reorganized it, and everything still works exactly the same. We actually have a name for that in computer programming. When I don't change the functionality, I just kind of reorganize the code. What's that called? Refactoring. We just refactored that chunk of code to make it a little bit more easy to use from a coding perspective. In fact, I could come over here, and what that means is I could come to my list, right? And I could add another movie to it, and the next time I visit the page, it should just automatically be there. I don't have to do anything else. I just have to add it to the list. So I can stick another movie on here, right? Oops, I lost a quote somewhere along the way. Save it. I know that linting is not installed. And now when I go back to my page, if I refresh, it just automatically shows up. I didn't have to do anything else. That already is a lot easier to use. I don't have to switch it in multiple spots anymore, right? It's all in one place. That's good. That's good. Yeah, what's up? Okay. So there's an apostrophe here. That is correct. Is that a problem for us? It could be. It could be a problem for us, but right now it's not. Why? I'm using double quotes for this string. So Python does not care whether I use double quotes or single quotes around my strings. It does not care. If the string that I want has a single quote in it or an apostrophe, then double quotes makes sense. If the string that I want to write has double quotes inside of it, then actually single quotes make sense to use on the outside. What if it has both? I'm sorry? What if the string has both single quotes and double quotes? I can use triple quotes, or there's another option. I can start escaping stuff. I can escape the quotes with a slash out in front. That means when I see a quote with a slash out in front, that means this quote is part of the string. It is not the end of the string, right? It is not telling us that we've hit the end of the string. It's telling us that the quote is part of the string. So we do need to pay attention to that. You'll notice, actually, maybe you've already noticed this in your own typing, that people will usually default to either single quotes or double quotes unless they have to switch to the other one. I personally default to double quotes. That's what I'm used to doing. So I'll always use double quotes for things unless something forces me not to. Other people will default to using single quotes for stuff unless something forces them not to. Any other questions before I move on to the next piece of the walkthrough? Yeah, what's up? Yeah. So the question was asking, if I decided not to use formatting, right, what would that look like? And I could get there. I don't have to use format to accomplish this. I can use a different technique, one that we've actually already seen. What technique? Concatenation. I can use plain old string concatenation. In both of these situations, actually, I can use string concatenation. I could concatenate the name of the movie title in here if I wanted to. I could also do the same with the cross-off options. I could just concatenate it in here. So plus signs on either side, right? Would get the job done. So the question then is, well, why bother? Why do we bother using format? And the answer to that question is actually one of convenience again. By using format, it keeps all of my substitution variables at the very end. So if I want to find what variables are included and make some changes to those, they're all in one spot. I don't have to go through what might be a very long string to see what values are being substituted into that string. Is that a convincing argument to use .format? I don't know. That's really up to you at the end of the day, whether that's a convincing argument or not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good question. The question was, would there be any difference between activating hello Flask here versus the Flask -end that you saw on the homework assignment? What does anybody think? They both have the same stuff installed, so for our purposes, they would actually be effectively the same. And so then, you know, your follow-up question might be then, well, why do we have them? Why do I have two? And that's really comes down to organization. The reason that these environments exist are to help create isolated environment for every program that you're operating on. So I have one environment for each program that I'm operating on that has the stuff that that program needs, even if that environment may in fact be a little bit redundant. The organizational qualities of the environment are considered important enough, even if there is redundancy involved. That's not a terrible, the question was, would you want to create an environment for every Git repository? That's not a bad way of thinking about it. I think that there's probably going to be exceptions to that, like most rules in life, but in general, I think that's probably a pretty solid path to follow. Yeah, one environment per Git repository. Yeah. Great questions. Any other questions before we move on to the next part of our walkthrough? Yeah, what's up?
I do have a question. Going back to the .format.
Okay.
It might depend on Python version. There's, I forget what it's called, but put F in front of the quotes.
If you put a what in front of the quotes?
F, the letter F.
The letter F?
And then don't use .format. You use code reasons inside of it. Basically declare expression within it.
Oh, okay. So,
I can't remember what that's called, but I've never seen anybody actually mention it.
so it's like inline substitution. Is that what you're getting at? Where I could actually just put in a variable name here, like cross off options? We're actually going to see something fairly similar to that in the future when we look at a concept called templates. We're not going to see that exactly. I don't think. I have to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever heard of that, but it does not surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that that's a thing at all. I'm not surprised in the slightest that that exists. That doesn't mean that it's good or bad, or, I mean, it is a thing. I believe that 100%. It is a thing that exists that people use sometimes. Is it any better or worse than format? I don't know. Probably not. All right. Nice. F strings. Okay. I'm not very familiar with the topic, but yeah, it's very similar, it sounds like. Yep. And that's not unusual for computer science. 100 different ways to do one thing, not unusual at all, in the slightest. That bothers some people, right? That bothers people who want there to be one correct answer to every question. Unfortunately, that's not what life is like, especially for computer science. There's going to be 100 different ways that you can accomplish every problem from a comp sci perspective. All right, so the next thing that let me go back to my list here, make sure that I'm not skipping anything. All right, cool. The next thing that we want to do is we want to validate some stuff when we cross off a movie. So what we want to make sure to do is when a user wants to cross off a movie, we're going to check and make sure that the movie that they're trying to cross off is on the list that they have. If it's not on the list, they gave us a different movie somehow, then we're going to send them back and to tell them that they made a mistake. You tried to cross off a movie that's not on your list, so we're going to present a message to them to that effect. If they give us a movie that does work, then we're just going to let it do whatever it was supposed to do as usual, right? So that's next up on our list of to-dos. So here now is our route for crossing movies off of our watch list. And so we have to start doing some validation here. How am I going to perform this check? How am I going to check to see if what they've given me is valid or not? What am I going to do? If statement. If what? If... Actually, I skipped a thing, didn't I? I need this... What's this line doing again? It's grabbing the data from the form, right? So I need to do this first. I need to do that line first, and then I can put in my if statement that says what? If crossed off movie. All right. Now, am I checking to see if the movie is in the list, or am I checking to see if the movie is not in the list? Does it matter? Not really. It doesn't really matter. I could do it either way and still get the job done. I'll go ahead and check and see if it is not in. And then how do I get my list again? Call the function, get current watch list. Okay. So if this is the case, it's not in my current watch list, we decided that we wanted to send them back to the original page, but we actually want to do a little bit more than that. We want to construct an error message that tells them. In fact, we want our message to be as specific as possible. I want to say the name of the movie that they did give to me is not in your watch list, right? And so again, we could use format to construct an error message for us. I know I'm leaning heavily on the format method today, right? So I'm going to make an error message that is going to put in the name of the movie. So I'll stick in a placeholder here, right? Is not on your watch list. And then I can use .format here, or an F string if you are feeling so inclined to substitute in that movie. We're still not done. I've got a little bit more work to do, right? I've created my error message. What's the next thing? What's the next thing on our agenda? I need to redirect them back, but I need to be a little careful. When I redirect them back, I want to make sure that this error message is included, right? In fact, the instructions tell us that we need to pass along a helpful error message as a query parameter in the URL. What does that tell us if we're using query parameters? We're using a GET request, right? Which all redirects by definition are GET requests. It is not possible to do a redirect that is a POST request. It is not possible. Well, I hate saying things definitively like that because somebody out there is going to be able to prove me wrong with some weird way of finagling around the redirects. The vast majority of redirects, almost all of them, if not all of them, are going to be GET requests. So how do I do a redirect again? I got to import it first. All right, cool. So I go up here to the top and redirect, right? Okay. I got the import. Now what? Now what do I need to do? I'm sorry? I need to, did you say redirect? Like this? Okay. And then what information do I need to provide? A route. So where do I want to send them? If they gave me a bad value, where do I want to send them? The home page, which the route for that is what exactly? I can look it up. It's just this, right? Slash. That's the index. So I'm going to send them back to the index, but I'm not quite done. I also want to attach my error message as a query parameter. So how do I do that? I'm sorry? Question mark, and then what? give it a name, error equals, and then this is where I would plug in the error message, right? So again, you could use concatenation here. You could use format again if you want to, right? However you want to get there. However you want to get there is fine. Are we all good? Everybody with me? I'm going to pause here for a minute just to see. We only wrote a few lines of code here. We only wrote a little bit here. This code down here is fine, right? It can stay the same. There's no problem with this code. This is if everything worked properly. So this should be okay, right? I don't need to mess with that. I'm only interested in the case where things go wrong right now. Okay. So we still have a little bit more work to do. Once I get back, yeah, question. Crossed off movie, yep. I'm substituting the name of the movie that they gave me into the list. That's right. So once I make it back to the index page, right, I have some more, yeah, question. Yep. Yeah, that's a good question. How am I ever going to get to this error? I'm picking it from a drop-down list. How do I ever get here? That is a good question. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, ask you to be a little bit patient because I do intend to show you how to do that. I would like to do one more thing first before we get there, though. So I will show you. I promise. That's the grand finale for today. Yeah. Good question. Will this redirect end the function? What do we think? I see. Will the redirect end the function, or will it keep going and do all this other stuff afterwards? I'm sorry? If the conditional is not met. So you're saying then that this redirect is going to end the function, is that right? You think it won't? Do we need to rock, paper, scissors for it? We could try it. We could try it out and see eventually. But you're right, we need a return there. I was going to let us drive off that cliff just to see what was going to happen. And I still may do that a little bit later. But we do need a return statement there. Okay, so the last piece that we really need to do today is on the main page, right? Because it's possible that we get here now and there might be an error message. There may not be an error message, though. If I just come here normally, for the first time, there's not going to be an error message. But if I fill out the form wrong and it sends me back, then there is going to be an error message. And I need to rewrite this code to be able to accommodate both of those situations, right? So let's assume for a second that there is an error message. Let's do that one first. There is an error message. I want to grab that error message and show it to the user. How do I do that? How am I going to grab the error message out and show it to the user? Request.args, it's a query parameter, so I need to pull it out of the request, right? Request.args is step one. So error message equals request.args, and then what am I going to pass in here? Oh, .get, thank you. .get, and then what goes inside the parentheses? It's the name of whatever value I'm looking for, which we said was error. It has to match whatever this text is. If I called this something different, then I'd have to put that in the parentheses down there. It just needs to match. Just needs to match. All right, so get error. So here's our error message, right? There's our error message, and now I need to make sure that it gets displayed to the user. So how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I make sure that the user gets to see this? I'm sorry? Put it into an element, so we can do that, right? Error HTML equals, what element would be good? I'm sorry? A p tag. P tag is fine. So p plus error message, oops, plus /p, oops. All right, so I grabbed the error message, I stuck it in a p tag. Am I done? No. I have to add it onto the content. So I'm going to come to the content, and then at the very end here, I'll say plus error HTML. So remember, that was the case for if the message did exist. I wanted to include that there. What if the message doesn't exist? What do I expect to happen? It'd be empty. There wouldn't be anything in there. And then what would I want error HTML to be if there is no error? Just blank. Can I check for that? How do I check for that? Do they equate to false? I don't actually know if that's true or not. Okay, so then what would I say? How would I actually do that in practice? What would I say in code? If error message, and so if the error message exists, this will be true, and if it doesn't exist, it'll be false, right? So if an error message exists, then I want this stuff to happen, correct? All right. If an error message doesn't exist, else, I want error HTML to be just a blank string, right? Either way, it gets concatenated on the end. If it's a blank string, I don't see it. If there's an error message in there, then hopefully I will see it. Does that make sense what we did with that if statement? I think now we're at the point where we can actually start trying to test this out a little bit. So I'm going to show you how I can actually trigger this error message somehow. So let's take it for a spin. I'm going to make sure I save my code here. It's possible that, we made some mistakes somewhere along the way. We'll see what happens when I try it out. I'm going to go back here and refresh the page. Now, if I pick a movie that's on the list, like normal, I hit cross it off, it still does exactly what we expect it to, right? I want to test the error condition. So how do we force an error? That's the question that was asked a few minutes ago, and now we're going to see how to make that work. I'm going to go up here. I'm in Chrome right now. I apologize. I know Firefox is the browser of choice. Actually, I could switch over to Firefox real quick. Let me do that. Firefox. Oh, great. Time for updates. Oh, there we go. We're good. Okay. Maybe we're good. Is it doing it? There we go. All right, it's very tiny. Let me zoom in. All right, so I want to force an error. So I'm going to open up my developer tools here. I can start with the inspector if I want to. That's fine. I'm going to go into my form down here, this cross-off form, right? Here's the HTML. You can see all of it, how it looks. In fact, this might have been a nice thing to do earlier just to verify that the option tags are being created the way that we want. This is actually where we want to be anyway. I'm going to come in here and pick one of these. Goodbye the matrix and hello, what is it, us? And notice it still says the matrix, but I switched the value to be something different. So think about what that means. Now when I select the matrix on my form and I hit cross it off, it's not sending the matrix anymore. It's sending this modified value. I went in and modified the HTML. The form doesn't know. The form doesn't care. The form's going to grab whatever value is in there and send it. But this movie's not on our list. This movie is not on our list. So this should trigger that error message. It should. So let's see if I can hit the cross it off button now. I guess I need to turn this off real quick. Cross it off, and whoops. And you'll notice it didn't take me to the cross off page, and I have an error message down here at the bottom now. That was not there before. So I made this happen by going into the developer tools and modifying the HTML code. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, do people actually do that? And yeah, heck yeah, they do. They're going to try and do whatever they can to get in there. Yeah.
So when we were doing the space jam thing, and you went in and you tried to do that,
Hmm?
it didn't affect the original.
Yep.
It's kind of, but this is affecting.
It's not permanent,
Okay,
right? The change that I made is not permanent.
okay.
In fact, it's already gone. If I go back and I take a look at the code in the inspector again, the change that I made is already gone. It's already switched back. So it just worked that one time. I changed it, I hit the submit button, and it read the value that I modified and sent it in the post request. And that's what the website tried to work with, right? So think about what you could do with this information, right? I could do all kinds of nefarious things with this information. For example, I could stick some HTML in here. Right? What's stopping me? What's stopping me from doing this? Nothing. Nothing right now. So I stick some HTML in there with an evil laugh, and then I hit the button again, and look at that. Not only did it grab this, but it actually executed the HTML that I plugged in there at the same time. That's really bad, right? That's really bad. So I can't stop people from injecting their own values. That is not something that I can do. However, I can prevent them from, or I can nullify the effect of HTML on those values, right? How do I do that? Escaping. I have to escape the content. So let's do that. I need to go back into my code and actually escape the value. I need to escape, in particular, this error message that I'm getting. I need to escape it. So how do I do that? I got to import a thing. What do I have to import? I just say import CGI, I think it is, right? Okay. Dot escape? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. And so then down here, I come down here to where I was a second ago, and instead of just plugging in the error message directly, I want to escape it. So I'll say CGI.escape around this, which should hopefully prevent the shenanigans that I just got into, right? Hopefully. Let's test it out. I'm going to save this content again. I'm going to go back to the page and refresh and try one more time to, oh, actually, you'll notice, right? Now the tags are there. You can see the tags. That means it worked. Somebody tried to inject HTML in. I said, nope, not going to run it. I'm going to escape those out so they don't execute as proper HTML. Anytime I take information from the user and then show it back to that user, I have to escape that data. I have to prevent stuff like this from happening. Is that clear, I hope? And so at this point, I think we've accomplished what we set out to do in today's walkthrough. there any questions? Any comments? Yeah, what's up? So the question was, is it fair to say anytime you take user input, you should escape it? And certainly that would be okay. I don't think anybody would complain that you're doing that. I think that would be all right. Yep. Any other questions or comments before I turn you loose on today's studio? Yeah, what's up, Gary?
There was a, in the documentation, there's a little bit of the immediate subject, but for the Git bash window, and they said they have a dedicated merge conflict, or there's dedicated merge conflict tools,
Okay.
resolution tools. I didn't know if there was one to recommend.
I'm not familiar with the merge conflict tools. It's a good question, because merge conflicts are sort of what everybody hates about working with Git. So I certainly see why they'd be of value. I'm not super familiar with them, though. We could take a look at it if you want to after we break up into groups. Yeah. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the walkthrough session. So go ahead and break up into your groups, work on Studio, and we'll go over today's Studio at 8 o'clock, as usual. Thanks, everybody. Sorry about the April Fool's thing. Not really, actually. I'm not sorry at all. It was worth it.
Can we see the code again?
That was cool.
Let me just turn off my recording real quick.